second session that I run is about the key thinkers that underpin CLD theory, and this is in two different domains. The first domain is the key sociological thinkers, and the second domain is looking at philosophers and postmodernism. But postmodernism is something that's really interesting. I think as I talk to you, it'll become clear why it matters. And I'm going to tell you about postmodernism generally, then three people: Foucault, Derrida, and Bourdieu. What I want people to learn from this session is theory that underpins CLD, because theory changes over time and the way people think changes over time. And for some people, this will be new ideas that underpin their practice. And I want them to think about the ideas and see if they think they're relevant to what they do today. The other part of postmodernism that's important is living and managing complexity. So manufacturing was very much about inputs, outputs, making widgets, quality, performance indicators, things are done. Postmodernism is all about how life is much more complex than that, and you can't have inputs and outputs. Things are much more difficult and much more complex and much more multi-layered. The third thing that's important about postmodernism is the emphasis on community. And this is to do with the local and the complexity, is that postmodernism believes that the community is an important site in which knowledge occurs, and that knowledge is held locally. And knowledge about society is held locally. And that big ideas, big postmodern ideas like Marxism, feminism, any other ism you care to think of, is no longer relevant. What we should be thinking about is community at the local level. There are points of tension in postmodernism, and the points of tension are local action and collective action, because postmodernism believes that local action, because it's interested in the local, is what matters. And therefore there's a tension with postmodernism about what do you think about collective action then if you're postmodern. Because I'm a postmodernist, I believe in postmodernism, but there's a tension there. If you believe everything is local, when you get people to come together to fight for something, that's not local, it's more collective. So there's a tension point between local action and collective action. There's a tension point in structuralism, and by structuralism I mean all those things that go with systems and structures, like local government, for example. Because local government is very much about inputs, outputs, quality, performance indicators, and it's very modernist. And we work in structures. And so structuralism is an issue, it's a point of tension, because if we're postmodern and believe in the collective, the local, the narrative, then working in a local authority is very difficult, because postmodernism believes that life is more complex than inputs and outputs, and you can't just have an input of a CLD worker and have an output of educated young people going and getting jobs. Postmodernism says it's a damn sight more complex than that. So structuralism is a point of tension. Local knowledge and positivism. Local knowledge, postmodernism believes that knowledge that is local is more important than statistics. And positivism is simply a shorthand way of talking about quantitative data and statistics. So postmodernism says the local is what matters, local knowledge, knowing things in the individual. Intuition matters, common sense matters. I can't think of any other ways of knowing, but those matter just as much as statistics and the knowledge that university people bring, and it gets published in the papers with statistics. So that's a point of tension between the fact that policymakers listen to statistics. You only have to know, we all know that elected members like to know what percentage of people benefited from this youth programme or didn't or whatever. There's a tension between knowing things intuitively and common sense and knowing things in this formal way. And then another point of tension is the emancipatory dimension, which I mentioned before. It's linked to the local action and collective action. Postmodernism believes that emancipatory means that you go off and do good things for other people. And postmodernism believes that that's a collective action, and you don't necessarily do that because it's not necessarily in the best interest of the people you're doing it with. You need to start from the bottom. So I'm of the opinion, being a postmodernist, that postmodernism provides social capital for us as a profession, because it provides us with affirmation of a theoretical base. Because what we talked about at the very beginning of today was all these different things, the complexity of what we work with, the fact we need flexibility, we need to be patient tolerant, work with equality, all these many, 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 many things. And postmodernism, because it believes that life is complex, postmodernism gives a theoretical base for why we do what we do with complexity, and stops people thinking that we're the input-output. If you put this many CLD workers here, you'll get a good community output. So it's affirmation of the theoretical base. It recognizes and values boundary work. Postmodernism is very much about working, about breaking down boundaries. It's very anti-silos. You know, silos of where people work in silos and that don't talk to each other. So postmodernism recognizes and values boundary work, which is the work that goes on that people do who are not in silos and who are prepared to go out and make partnerships with others, which is something that CLD is very, very good at. We're very good at forming partnerships and working with others. Other professions are not so good at it. And postmodernism provides a rationale and reason for recognizing and valuing boundary work. And the third thing is it releases us from Marxist discourses, because I'm old enough to remember when Marxism was really jolly good thing and really great, and that we would all be Marxist and make society more equal. And over the years, I felt it a release to be thinking, yes, society needs to be more equal, but it's a damn sight more complex than just making people have the same income. The group task after the presentation was simply to discuss the ideas that had been presented and to think about what that meant for society and the implications for practice. When we thought about the key philosophers, I asked them to think about habitus and field. Habitus and field were explained to them in the presentation, and I asked them to think on their own of an example of habitus and field. I think it was beneficial for people who came to the event because the ideas were new to them, and it gave them an opportunity to think about something new, which was stimulating and hopefully made them think about practice in a different way. And philosophy is always based on values, and so it enabled them to look at the values of other people and how that would have bearing on their practice.